Zone Express Terminal.
Indian emergency workers have rescued a 10-year-old boy with hearing and speech impairments from a narrow well.
The child fell down the 80-foot well on Friday afternoon and was trapped there for 4 days. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Rich Yelago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. The Philippines detects 16 additional cases of Omicron subvariants BA.5 and BA.2.12.1. Despite the increasing number of infections, DOH sees no need to elevate Metro Manila to COVID-19 Alert Level 2. The Philippine National Police to impose a gun ban for the inauguration rites of President-elect Marcos Jr. and Vice President-elect Duterte. Russia condemns the Ukrainian shelling of Donetsk, which resulted in 5 deaths and 35 injuries. Russian energy giant Gazprom to reduce the flow of gas going into Germany by about 40%. And emotional BTS members tell fans they're taking a break from the K-pop supergroup. The Department of Health projects a possible increase of severe and critical COVID-19 cases in August. However, it believes it is too early to escalate Metro Manila to Alert Level 2. Madeline Villar Moratillo has the details.
The country needs to log 818 new COVID-19 cases every day in the next 2 weeks before raising Metro Manila to Alert Level 2. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara made such clarification following reports of elevating COVID-19 alert levels in the National Capital Region or NCR. Vergara says there are standards to be met before raising or downgrading alert levels in an area. Among these are the increase in the health utilization rate to moderate risk and the bed occupancy rate hitting 50%.
Pangalawa, kung tayo ay nasa NCR, we are averaging around 170 cases per day. Para maging 6 ang kanyang ADAR, kailangan magkaroon siya ng around 818 cases per day ng 2 linggo para umabot tayo dun sa 6 na sinasabi natin.
For now, the Department of Health says NCR is still in the low-risk category. Although 12 areas in Metro Manila saw an uptick in cases, the majority of which are only asymptomatic or mild, and they have not converted into an increase in hospital admissions. Despite this, the Health Department does not rule out the possibility of an increase in hospital utilization due to COVID-19 by August this year.
Base po dito sa ginawa nilang projection, sinama nila dun sa kanilang assumptions yung reduction in the compliance to minimum public health standards, yung ating booster uptake at saka yung pagpasok nito mga subvariants ng Omicron. Base po doon sa scenario kung saan nakapasok ang mas transmissible na subvariants, tayo ay nakapagbaba na nung may reduction ng minimum public health standards at saka yung ating booster uptake is mananatiling ganito na ang uptake is just this much. Magkakaroon po tayo ng pagtaas ng pagkaka-ospital pagdating ng mga August of this year. And this would be around 4,800 plus.
Vergara reminded the public that COVID-19 infections can be prevented by observing minimum public health protocols and getting vaccinated and boosted. Madeline Villar Moratillo for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Health has detected 16 additional cases of Omicron subvariants BA.5 and BA.2.12.1 in the Philippines. Vin Pascua reports.
The country has recorded 16 more cases of the highly transmissible Omicron subvariants BA.5 and BA.2.12.1. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres says 6 cases of BA.5 and 10 new cases of BA.2.12.1 subvariants have increased the country's total cases to 11 and 39 respectively. The Health Department reported that among the 6 BA.5 cases, 2 came from Metro Manila, 1 each from Regions 2, 6, and 10, while the last one's location is still being verified. 4 of them are fully vaccinated, while the vaccination status of the 2 is under verification. Among the 6, all but 1, who's still in home isolation, have already recovered. On the other hand, of the 10 BA.2.12.1 cases, 4 came from the National Capital Region, 2 from Region 4A, and 1 each from Regions 2, 5, and 6. The last one is a returning overseas Filipino. 3 of the patients are fully vaccinated. 2 of them showed mild symptoms, while 3 are asymptomatic. Only 1 case remains active since the 8 are deemed recovered. Vergeres says health authorities are still verifying their travel history and exposure. This is Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Authorities will impose a gun ban in Metro Manila and Davao City as part of the security preparations for the respective inauguration rites of the country's Vice President-elect and President-elect. Mar Gabriel has the details.
To ensure security is in place for the oath-taking ceremonies of President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President-elect Sara Duterte, the Philippine National Police will suspend permits to carry firearms outside residence. Vice President-elect Duterte is set to take her oath in Davao City on June 19, while President-elect Marcos Jr. will take his oath at the National Museum in Manila on June 30. PNP Director for Operations, Police Major General Val de Leon said the gun ban in Davao would be effective from 12:01 a.m. on June 16 until midnight of June 21. On the other hand, De Leon said the gun ban in Metro Manila would be observed from 12:01 a.m. on June 27 until midnight of July 2. The cancellation of PTC means a gun owner may not bring their firearms outside their residence during the period mentioned, even if they present a valid permit. The PNP has suggested the local government of Manila should declare June 30 as a holiday to avoid heavy traffic on the day of Marcos Jr.'s inauguration. Meanwhile, in Davao City, a no-fly and no-sail zone will be observed on June 19 in the time of Vice President-elect Duterte's inauguration. Deploying 3,711 personnel in the city, the PNP is also considering shutting down cell phone signals on the said date. Mar Gabriel, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The camp of Vice President-elect Sara Duterte has shared details of her inauguration on June 19 in Davao City. Duterte has chosen to swear in before a former professor who is also a sitting member of the Supreme Court. We have Man Corvera for this story.
Vice President-elect Sara Duterte will take her oath as the 15th Vice President of the Republic before Supreme Court Associate Justice Ramon Paul Hernando. Duterte explained her choosing Justice Hernando, who was one of her professors and became her friend over the past 10 years. The Vice President-elect says she does not have any other engagement before her inauguration and will just stay home with her family in Davao City. Duterte's inauguration will be held at San Pedro Square in Davao City at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, starting off with a religious activity. After her oath-taking, a musikahan pasasalamat will follow, which will last until 11 o'clock in the evening. Liloan Mayor and Tourism Secretary-Designate Cristina Frasco, who is also her spokesperson, confirmed the attendance of President Rodrigo Duterte at his daughter's inauguration. Vice President Leni Robredo was also invited to attend, but there's no confirmation from her yet. No information was given regarding President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s attendance at his running mate's oath-taking ceremony. The public will be allowed to witness the event. Mayan Corvera for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Marcos family has yet to discuss if former First Lady Imelda Marcos will join them in staying in Malacanang after President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s inauguration. Senator Amy Marcos told reporters that they have not discussed who will stay in Malacanang because they have been there. When they were joking, Senator Marcos said even before her brother won the election, he already mentioned he will not reside in Malacanang because when they were young, he did nothing but to go out of the palace. She said the family is preparing for the inauguration of Marcos Jr., but the top priority is to clear their family's name and remember the legacy of their father, former President Ferdinand Edrelin Marcos Sr.
Finland hopes that the incoming Marcos administration will condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, while Romania, Norway, and South Africa have expressed their willingness to help the Philippines with its oil supply and renewable energy sources. Eden Santos has the details.
Barely 2 weeks before his inauguration, President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has received more diplomats in his headquarters in Mandaluyong City. Mission chiefs from Norway, Finland, Hungary, Romania, and South Africa paid a courtesy call with Marcos Jr. today. At a media briefing after his meeting with the President-elect, Finnish Ambassador Juha Markus Poiko said he hopes the new administration will respect the UN resolution condemning Russia's aggression on Ukraine.
Current government administration here, the Philippine government, which we appreciate, they have condemned through the United Nations General Assembly resolutions. The Philippines has been in the group of countries condemning the Russian aggression. And what I convey to the President-elect is that I hope that his administration will continue to appreciate and respect this approach from the Philippine side in the future as well.
The Finnish envoy also blamed Russia for high fuel costs and ballooning inflation.
The EU has no sanctions on all the agricultural products from Russia. Zero. The inflation due to fuel prices and grains, that's because of the Russian aggression, not because of the sanctions. It's because of the Russian aggression what we are feeling here in terms of inflation or even higher inflation all around the world.
As the world faces higher gas prices, Romania, Norway, and South Africa said they are willing to assist the Philippines with its oil supply and renewable energy sources. Norwegian Ambassador Bjorn Jansen sees offshore wind as a viable source of energy in the Philippines, while Romania and South Africa say they can supply the Philippines with their oil.
Sir, what is that new sector that are you referring to? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so offshore wind is basically, so the best wind resources in the Philippines and in many countries are offshore, at sea. And actually in the areas of the sea where you would need floating solar. So the windmills will float in the water. And Norway has one of the first big projects of this right now being developed. And this is a great opportunity for the Philippines for a plenty supply of energy.
We also discussed energy. Romania has had, for the last decades, 50% of our energy consumption from clean energy, 25% from nuclear energy, 25% from hydroelectric power plant. This is clean energy. We are all, every country in the world is interested how to expand the use of clean energies. And I believe we have agreed that there is ample room for cooperation in this area.
We explain what we have already as a bilateral relations between Philippines and South Africa. We remain the biggest bilateral agreement in Africa as South Africa. But we also explain the opportunities that Southern Africa and Africa can offer to the Philippines. As you know, that everyone is now taking the flights and the journey from Europe, from America to Africa, and South Africa in particular, where we have discovered a lot of oil in Angola, in South Africa, gas, and they've all taken tips so that they can be able to complement the shortage of oil and gas.
The envoys also discussed with Marcos Jr. job opportunities and business prospects. Finland and Hungary acknowledged the big contributions of Filipino communities in the different sectors of their countries.
I express my gratitude to the President-elect for the contribution of the Filipino community and society in Finland. I mean, hardworking, friendly people who live and work in my country, and it's highly appreciated.
Thank you to Mr. President-elect for the labor force, what the Philippines is providing by the overseas Filipino workers. Already in Hungary, more than 800 Filipinos are working, and we are happy to increase the number in the future.
Eden Santos for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The SUV driver involved in a hit-and-run in Mandaluyong City has surrendered before the Philippine National Police. Jose Antonio San Vicente apologized personally to the victim and explained that he got confused and blank-minded after the incident. Randy Bernardino has the story.
Hintayin mo yung warrant of arrest. San Vicente, yung apelyido mo, di ba? Huwag ka lang sana maging Santo Vicente.
2 days after PNP officer-in-charge Police Lieutenant General Vicente Danao issued such a stern warning, the driver of the SUV involved in the hit-and-run of a security guard manning the traffic in Mandaluyong City submitted himself to the authorities. Accompanied by his parents, Jose Antonio San Vicente surrendered to General Danao at the PNP headquarters.
Maayos ang anak ko. Sino ba may gusto ng takbuhan yon? Siyempre, naratol na rin siya eh, di ba? Naglabas na si General Danao what's that? Yung sa news, natakot na talaga ako. Then I said, gawin na natin. We have to go to General Danao already.
The suspect apologized to Christopher Joseph Floralde. He explained that he got confused and rattled. That's why he did not stop to check on the victim.
So hindi ko na talaga maalala kung ano iniisip ko nun. Like, kaya sinabi ko, gulo isip ko nun hanggang ngayon. Mahirap mag-isip, baka hindi ko masasagot ngayon. Baka mali pa masabi ko sa inyo. Sorry.
San Vicente said they would shoulder the cost of Floralde's medication and also offered to help his family. The driver also promised to face the frustrated murder charges against him before the court. When asked why he did not immediately submit to the authorities, his father came to his defense.
Hindi po ba natural lang sa unang may ganyang grabing insidente, abogado na tatawagin mo kasi hindi na clear yung mind ko kasi anak ko eh. Yung po ang dahilan. So, every time mag-move na ako, nagtatanong na ako sa abogado kasi natataranta na ako. Hindi na nga kami makakain. Ang takot ko, pag hindi na kami capable mag-isip, paano pa? Kasi hindi kami makakain, hindi kami makatulog. Kaya we need yung abogado. Yun po ang dahilan nun kung bakit.
The San Vicente family also surrendered to authorities the vehicle involved in the incident. It is now in the custody of the PNP Highway Patrol Group. After submitting his affidavit, the suspect was allowed to go home while waiting for the scheduled preliminary investigation before the prosecutor's office. The authorities, meanwhile, consider the case resolved.
So they will have their day in court or his day in court, no? So para po dadaan pa po kasi ito sa preliminary investigation kasi hindi na po natin siya pwedeng inquest due to the lapse of time. So, doon sa PI at pag makita ng fiscal na meron talaga, probable cause or makita nila na meron kaso talaga, so it will be filed and let the court decide.
This is Randy Bernardino from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, Russia cuts Nord Stream gas deliveries to Germany by 40%. 15 dead and 500,000 people impacted by heavy rains in Guatemala. And WHO to decide soon if monkeypox outbreak represents a global health emergency. Stay tuned. Matanang Agila International will return with more of these stories.
This portion. Ang morning show na always nagbibigay ng ngiti at saya sa bawat kada all over the world. Tara na't ma-inspire at ma-amaze sa kwento ng mga bawat kada na nagwagi sa anumang hamon at pagsubok ng buhay. Itago ng mga remote control at tumambay lang dito sa paborito niyong barkada sa umaga, ang Kada Umaga! Dahil kayo ang bida dito.
Welcome back to Matanang Agila International. 5 dead, including an 11-year-old boy and his mother, following a massive shelling of Donetsk by the Ukrainian army. 35 others were wounded, while several establishments were destroyed. Roman Kosarev of RT News has the report.
It was a very tragic day indeed on Monday as several people were killed and scores wounded as a result of Ukrainian shelling on several districts of the city of Donetsk. 5 people have been killed, including an 11-year-old boy and his mother who were at a market. A couple of vendors died there as well. Besides that, a lot of damage to civilian infrastructure in the city of Donetsk. A gas pipeline was destroyed as well as a fuel depot. Several houses, multiple apartment buildings, cars. There was fumes of black smoke all over the city of Donetsk on Monday as it was shelled for continuously for a period of at least 2 hours. People were hiding in the basements. Yours truly also was right in the center of the city, and as the shelling started, it was very close to me, so we had to go and hide in the basements as well. People here in Donetsk have not seen anything like that since 2014, as they told us, and here are some of their witness accounts.
I was sitting in an armchair and my husband was in the bathroom working. We heard a blast and the windows shattered. I looked around and there was blood everywhere. I jumped out into the corridor to see what happened to him, but he was okay, thank God.
Were you hit by the shards?
Yes, shards from windows and even from door panels hit me. The doctors checked me over and removed all the glass from my arms and legs, but I refused to go to the hospital. Let those who are really badly wounded go. Another guy was taken to hospital. He was hit in the vein by a shard.
My friend Nastya and I were the very first who ran into the basement. Then there was an explosion. I cried a lot. I'm just scared.
I automatically went down to the basement with my child.
How old is your child?
8 years old. We stood here. We didn't go further inside, and debris fell on us right here. I've come to my apartment, but it's completely destroyed. My child lays on the bed here, sits at the computer. And if she were lying here, we were lucky that we were in the basement. It saved our lives.
While we haven't heard any damage to military infrastructure, it's civilians and the civilian infrastructure that was heavily damaged. I'm standing in one of the places that Ukrainian artillery targeted. This is a maternity hospital, very close, very near and dear to my heart and to my cameraman as well. This is where his son was born 4 years ago, and my goddaughter was born here as well. So it's very painful to see what happened here. The shell landed right on the roof of this building. You can see all the windows, the glass has been shattered. The top floor is almost completely destroyed as well. Women that were in this hospital have all managed to go down into the basement to evacuate into the bomb shelter, and fortunately no one was killed or injured. Also, the head of the Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushilin, well, he said that this is also very unprecedented, the way Donetsk is being shelled recently, and here is his statement.
The enemy has literally crossed all the lines. They use prohibited methods of warfare. Residential and central districts of Donetsk are shelled. Other cities and towns of the Donetsk People's Republic are also under fire.
Kremlin Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov lashed out at Kyiv after authorities in Donetsk reported that indiscriminate strikes on the city by Ukrainian forces had left 5 civilians dead and almost 40 injured. Peskov heavily criticized Ukraine, saying the shelling of civilian facilities was barbaric and intensified. The People's Republic of Donetsk, or DPR, said its capital suffered the worst shelling because the strikes hit a busy market and a maternity hospital. The development prompted DPR head Denis Pushilin to request extra military assistance from Russia in a bid to stop the strikes on civilians. The deputy commander and press secretary of the Republic's militia, Eduard Basurin, later clarified that Pushilin was hoping that Moscow could deploy its ground and air launch missiles to help destroy the Western weapons that were allegedly used by Kyiv in the shelling. When asked whether such assistance would be provided, Peskov responded by saying it's the prerogative of the Russian Defense Ministry as it's related to the special military operations in Ukraine. But he noted that President Vladimir Putin made it clear that the main and principal goal of the special military operation is ensuring the safety and protection of the people in Luhansk and Donetsk.
Russian energy giant Gazprom said yesterday it would slash the flow of gas going into Germany by about 40%. The state-run gas exporter said gas via the Nord Stream pipeline can currently provide only 100 million cubic meters per day. That amount is down from the expected daily volume of 167 million cubic meters. Gazprom says the reduction is due to a delay in the repair of compressor units by the German company Siemens. Along with many Western companies, German conglomerate Siemens announced its exit from the Russian market after Moscow sent troops into Ukraine. Although many EU countries have taken steps to reduce their dependencies on Russian energy, several member states who are heavily reliant on Moscow's energy supplies are against imposing a natural gas embargo on Russia. Fuel prices in Europe surged with Gazprom's announcement.
Ukrainian fighters are struggling to use weaponry from the U.S. in battling Russian forces due to Pentagon's failure to deliver training materials, spare parts, and other logistical assistance, according to a Washington Post report. The BRAVE's $54 billion Ukraine aid program. The system, made by defense contractors Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, is not only expensive but also complicated. It comes with a 258-page user manual. A Ukrainian military officer told the Post, as quoted by RT News, that his unit had asked for the computer-based programs in late April, but the materials still haven't arrived. The Ukrainian troops are also getting less than 2 days of training on the system, while the U.S. Army's Javelin training course lasts for 2 weeks or 80 hours, as reported by the news agency.
U.S. President Joe Biden discloses a Western plan to build silos on the borders of Ukraine. It is to facilitate the export of grain caught in Russia's Black Sea blockade that has triggered a global food supply crisis. Biden blames Russian President Vladimir Putin for high food prices in the United States. He warns that the plan for new infrastructure to help get more Ukrainian wheat to world markets was taking time.
We can do it. And I'm working closely with our European partners to get 20 million tons of grain locked in Ukraine out onto the market to help bring down food prices.
Biden says, and these are his words, that the war has not only tried to wipe out the culture of Ukrainians, decimate people, and commit innumerable war crimes, but also prevented thousands of tons of grain that are locked up. He says the grains cannot get out to the Black Sea because they get blown out of the water. Biden says alternative land exports were complicated by Ukrainian railways using a different gauge than the networks in neighboring countries. The U.S. president's solution? Build silos.
So we're going to build silos, temporary silos, in the borders of Ukraine, including in Poland, so we can transfer it from those cars into those silos, into cars in Europe, and get it out to the ocean and get it across the world.
Villagers who survived a jihadist massacre in northern Burkina Faso say they had been left without any protection against the attackers. Government forces pulled out of the area. Survivors recount that over a period of hours on Saturday evening, armed men moved unhampered through the village of Seitenga, shooting, burning, and looting. The death toll, 79. The Sahel state began 3 days of mourning. The massacre is the second bloodiest attack in the nearly 7-year-old history of the jihadist insurgency in Burkina Faso. The campaign has claimed thousands of lives, forced nearly 2 million people to flee their homes, and dealt a crippling economic blow to one of the world's poorest countries.
Heavy rains have wreaked havoc in the Central American country of Guatemala. Government agencies report that mudslides have taken the lives of at least 15 people. Recent downpours have caused massive sinkholes in roads. Rains accompanied by strong winds have resulted in landslides and flooding. Hundreds of homes, several schools, and bridges have also been damaged. Officials say more than 500,000 people have been affected.
Reports of monkeypox in countries where the disease is not usually found are alarming health authorities. Director General of the World Health Organization, or WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, is concerned about the unusual behavior and spread of the virus.
So far this year, more than 1,600 confirmed cases and almost 1,500 suspected cases of monkeypox have been reported to WHO from 39 countries, including 7 countries where monkeypox has been detected for years and 32 newly affected countries.
Because of this, Ghebreyesus says the WHO will hold an emergency committee on June 23 to assess whether or not this outbreak represents a public health emergency of national or international concern. He believes this is an important step in breaking or fighting the outbreak.
We believe that it needs also some coordinated response because of the geographic spread. Plus, at the same time, having an executive committee would help us to discuss about this issue. These are experts, external experts, to understand the virus better.
Up next, Scotland leader launches campaign for new independence vote. Indian boy rescued after 4 days in a well. And US FDA approves the first oral tablet for treating severe alopecia areata. Find out more about these stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Masiglahin ang araw ng linggo. Kayo'y maaantig.
Huwag mo ubusin ang luha mo sa wala dito.
Mapapaisip.
What are we gonna do?
Matatawa.
Why so much food? Even no money, no honey, we make utang-utang.
Mapapahanga. At mapapainda. Kasama si The King, ang nag-iisang comedy king Dolphy.
Ano pangalan mo? Big po. Big po. Ano mo si Fernando po?
Tito Vic and Joey.
Mahirap ikwento, Vicky. Mahabang istorya.
At marami pang artista na kinagigiliwan noon magpahanggang ngayon. Cine Throwback.
This is still Mata ng Agila International. Germany is working hard to fill up its gas reserves for the winter as Russia's conflict with Ukraine continues to affect its access to fuel. Bierwang replenishes its stocks between winters to keep homes heated and Germany's energy-hungry industry humming during the cold months when demand is highest. But this year, the stakes are higher than ever.
Wir uns an einem Porenspeicher. Das ist ein Speicher, der sehr große Volumina aufnehmen kann, in ca. 1600 Meter Tiefe. Diese Speicher werden dazu verwendet, einen saisonalen Ausgleich am Gasmarkt sicherzustellen. Das heißt, den Unterschied zwischen Sommer und Winter auszugleichen und spielen daher natürlich auch für die Versorgungssicherheit eine wichtige Rolle.
Schmalzer also said it is essential that gas is available on the market for storage and that gas deliveries from Russia proceed normally, especially for the coming winter. because interruptions would mean difficulty to meet the filling targets. Now, there have been fears that a sudden shortage of Russian gas could bring Europe's biggest economy to its knees. This prompted the German government to adopt legislation requiring all of the nation's gas reservoirs to be 90% full by November.
The deal between Britain and Rwanda to send asylum seekers from the United Kingdom to the East African country has sparked much controversy. But the UK is standing its ground, and Rwanda is doing the same. A Rwandan government spokesperson describes the country's views on welcoming the migrants.
When the first flight lands here in Kigali, the new arrivals will be welcomed and will be looked after and supported to make new lives here. We will provide support with their asylum applications.
The plan aims to discourage desperate migrants from attempting to cross the English Channel by flying them some 6,400 kilometers to Rwanda, where they are expected to stay for good.
Another mass shooting incident in the United States killed 2 individuals inside a nightclub in Gary, Indiana. It was 1 in the morning when a 34-year-old man and a 26-year-old woman were rushed to a hospital last Sunday. Both were declared dead on arrival. Another victim was in critical condition, while 3 others were wounded. Victims appeared to have non-life-threatening injuries. The local police have already arrested a suspect, but they did not release any information about their identity. Authorities are still investigating the motive of the mass shooting. The newest shooting is one of the 263 mass shootings in the United States this year, according to the Gun Violence Archive. Last month, an 18-year-old gunman raided and killed 19 students and 2 teachers in an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Now, this was following another mass shooting in a grocery store in Buffalo, New York, where 10 people were killed, pushing the U.S. Congress to pass a bill regarding gun ownership.
The arrest of Ecuadorian indigenous leader Leonidas Iza has not dampened the spirits of his followers. In fact, it has ignited further protests. Demonstrators once again set up roadblocks to protest the country's rising fuel prices and living costs. They also demand the release of Iza. The vice president of the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador called for the group to radicalize the struggle.
Ante ello, le llamamos a todas nuestras estructuras organizativas, pueblos y nacionalidades indígenas del Ecuador a radicalizar la lucha a nivel nacional en defensa de nuestra agenda de la lucha y de nuestro máximo representante.
Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso gives a stern warning to those he refers to as executors of these violent acts.
Se ha iniciado la detención de los autores intelectuales y materiales ejecutores de estos actos violentos. Ahora le toca a la Fiscalía y al Poder Judicial actuar porque nadie está por encima de la ley. Quienes cometan actos vandálicos van a responder ante la justicia y ante el pueblo ecuatoriano.
Indian emergency workers rescued a 10-year-old boy with hearing and speech impediments late Tuesday from a narrow well where he was trapped for over 4 days. Rahul Sahu fell down the 80-foot well on Friday afternoon while playing in the backyard of his house in the central state of Chhattisgarh. Earth movers and cranes were used to help dig a tunnel next to the well, which is only a couple of feet wide. Army soldiers and members of India's disaster response agency helped in the operation. Jitendra Shukla, head of the local district administration, told journalists the boy was alive but weak and was rushed to a super specialty hospital in the nearby district. He added that a snake was seen in the same bore well, but the boy has shown exemplary bravery and stayed calm during the operation. Uncovered wells are a common feature of Indian farming villages and are frequently implicated in fatal accidents involving young children.
Experts say the region of the Amazon, where a British journalist and a Brazilian indigenous specialist disappeared, is ridden with crime. Geographer and Amazon expert at the Federal University of Para says the far-flung Amazon region is a haven for drug trafficking and environmental crime. Experts say drug gangs, illegal mining, logging, and poaching rings have capitalized on weaker enforcement by Brazilian authorities in the Javari Valley. This is where the two disappeared. Their disappearance remains unsolved. Investigators, however, have found their belongings and are analyzing suspected human remains. The findings that fueled fears that the two were murdered.
Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, begins her most recent drive for independence from the UK. The campaign publishing the first of a series of papers pushing for a new referendum. Scotland voted to remain part of the 3-century-old union with England in a landmark vote in 2014. But Sturgeon and her ruling Scottish National Party, or SNP, say there is an indisputable mandate for another referendum, particularly in the light of the UK's departure from the European Union. She says the papers will make a fresh case for Scotland. Scotland voted against a Brexit to become an independent country, and its First Minister says it better be able to chart its own course.
After everything that has happened, Brexit, COVID, Boris Johnson, it is time to set out a different and better vision. It is time to talk about making Scotland wealthier and fairer. It is time to talk about independence and then to make the choice.
To achieve independence, the UK government in London has to first agree to the devolved parliament in Edinburgh holding a referendum. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has repeatedly refused Sturgeon's demands to approve another vote, but she insists Scotland must forge a way forward without consent from London.
There is good news for those diagnosed with alopecia. U.S. health authorities have just announced the approval of a pill that may benefit those living with the autoimmune disorder. In Washington, D.C., Jeff Sanidad has the report.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, approves Olumiant oral tablets to treat adult patients with severe alopecia areata. Alopecia areata is a disorder that often appears as patchy baldness. It affects more than 300,000 people in the U.S. each year. This is the first time FDA approval of a systematic treatment for alopecia areata. This means treating the entire body rather than a specific location. Dr. Kendall Marcus, Director of the Division of Dermatology and Dentistry in the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, says access to safe and effective treatment options is crucial for the significant number of Americans affected by severe alopecia. Alopecia areata, commonly referred to as just alopecia, is an autoimmune disorder in which the body attacks its own hair follicles. It causes hair to fall out, often in clumps. The FDA says Olumiant is a Janus kinase or JAK inhibitor which blocks the activity of one or more of a specific family of enzymes, interfering with a pathway that leads to inflammation. Jeff Sanidad, Washington, D.C., Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
With Spain in the grips of a severe heat wave, Sevilla's carriage horses are suffering. Horse-drawn carriages are a popular tourist attraction in the southern Spain city, but with temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius, coachmen are having to take extra precautions. Coachman Antonio Garrido says slowing down the tour makes a big difference.
Y vuelto a empezar. Pero vamos con lo que te he dicho antes, que
que con la calor el caballo se puede pegar aquí tranquilamente 4 o 5 horas parado sin trabajar hasta las 6 o las 8 de la tarde que empecemos otra vez el movimiento.
German Martin of an animal refuge organization demands that the City Council and the Nature Protection Service unit of the Spanish Civil Guard regulate the situation to avoid animal deaths caused by heat stroke.
Coming right up, IKEA to further scale down business in Russia and Belarus. Squid Game reality show with a $4.56 million prize coming to Netflix. And BTS tells fans they're taking a break from the supergroup. Find out why when Mata ng Agila International returns.
The MLB Southeast Asia Cup o MSC 2022. Sino ang magwawagi at sino ang uuwing talunan? Which team will fly over the cloud at mababansagan Kings of Sea? Ang MSC 2022 Arena ay tatanghal sa Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. From June 11 until June 19. Follow #SupremeC for more updates. Mobile Legends Bang Bang, where heroes make history.
And we're back on Mata ng Agila International. The Russian currency's upward trend has achieved a psychological victory Wednesday as the ruble traded at 49.90 against the US dollar on the Moscow exchange. This is the first time the currency, named the worst performer in 2014 and the best in 2015, went as high since November 28. On Tuesday, the Russian currency closed at 50.89 against the US dollar on the Moscow exchange. As for the euro, it went down to 52.96 rubles Wednesday, 1.21 rubles less than the previous day, when the EU's currency sold at 54.17 at the close of Tuesday trading in Moscow. The ruble has recovered 16% in 2015 and more than 55% since December 16, dubbed Black Tuesday, when the ruble bottomed out against the dollar at nearly 80 rubles. Growing oil prices largely helped the Russian currency Wednesday.
Swedish furniture giant Ikea said Wednesday it would scale down its activities in Russia and Belarus after putting them on hold following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In a statement, Inca Group, which manages the majority of IKEA's stores, says businesses and supply chains across the world have been heavily impacted, and we do not see that it is possible to resume operations anytime soon. It added that as a consequence, Inter-IKEA Group and Inca Group have now each decided to enter a new phase to further scale down the IKEA business in Russia and Belarus. The action will result in layoffs, and production facilities will reportedly be sold to a new owner.
A Russian court extended until early July the pretrial detention on drug charges of U.S. basketball star Brittany Griner. Griner, a two-time Olympic gold medalist and WNBA champion, was detained at Moscow airport in February on charges of carrying in her luggage vape cartridges with cannabis oil, which could carry a 10-year prison sentence. Griner's detention came days before Russia defied U.S. warnings and sent troops into Ukraine, prompting the West to impose sweeping sanctions and send military aid to Kyiv. State Department spokesman Ned Price said that the U.S. officials met with representatives of Griner's team, the Phoenix Mercury, and were also seeking regular access to see the star player. Price also lambasted the extension of Griner's detention.
Our position for some time on this has been very clear. Brittany Griner should not be detained. She should not be detained for a single day.
Griner is considered among the greatest female basketball players in the U.S. and is a high-point scorer. She was playing club basketball in Russia before the resumption of the U.S. season, a common practice for American stars seeking additional income.
The U.S. Tennis Association, or USTA, announced that players from Russia and Belarus will be allowed to compete in the 2022 U.S. Open under a neutral flag. The organization said in a statement that it will allow all eligible players, regardless of nationality, to compete at the 2022 U.S. Open. The move comes after the ATP and WTA stripped Wimbledon of ranking points after the grass court Grand Slam tournament banned Russians and Belarusians. Ukrainian former player Sergei Stakhovsky immediately condemned USTA's decision. Stakhovsky, who retired from tennis earlier this year and joined Ukraine's reserve forces in Kyiv, tweeted, he salutes Wimbledon, the only entity which has a moral code, according to him. The USTA said it will work with the players and both tours to use the U.S. Open as a platform to further the humanitarian effort of the Tennis Plays for Peace program. Now, the organization added that it would introduce initiatives to help ongoing Ukrainian humanitarian efforts.
Netflix is actively recruiting participants for a reality TV show inspired by Squid Game, its most popular series of all time. But players do not have to worry because life or death, as depicted in the global hit show, won't be at stake in Squid Game, The Challenge. Instead, 456 recruits from around the world will play games where the worst fate is going home empty-handed and missing the chance to win a $4.56 million prize. The 456 participants are a nod to the South Korean show, which features the same number of players, with its main protagonist, Seong Gi-hoon, also referred to as Player 456. Netflix said that its new 10-episode reality TV show would feature the players competing through a series of games inspired by the original dystopian drama. The platform also said the game will offer surprising new additions because the players' strategies, alliances, and character will be put to the test while competitors are eliminated around them. Participants need to be at least 21 years old. They must speak English and be available for up to 4 weeks in early 2023 for filming. Earlier this week, Squid Game was officially renewed for Season 2 as Netflix and director Hwang confirmed they will once again team up for a whole new round.
K-pop megastars BTS told fans they were taking a break from the supergroup to focus on their solo careers, citing exhaustion and the pressures of stratospheric success in an emotional video appearance. But the Grammy-nominated Septet's label HYBE pushed back as their share price went into freefall, telling AFP that the pop juggernaut would still be working together.
과 상관없이 우리가 행복하게 얘기하고 행복하게 무언가를 할 수 있는
The clip included English subtitles, which used the word hiatus, but HYBE quickly disputed that, saying group activities would not be suspended. By the end of the dinner, several of the members of the group behind Dynamite and Butter had grown tearful as they voiced gratitude for their supporters, a fandom known online as the ARMY. BTS are the first all-South Korean act to reign over Billboard's U.S. Top Singles chart, a milestone they achieved with Dynamite. They're also one of few acts since the Beatles to release 4 albums that hit #1 stateside in less than 2 years.
할 말이 있어. 안 나와 그러니까.
Recently, BTS made headlines for visiting the White House to deliver a message to President Joe Biden on the fight against anti-Asian racism.
Get your daily dose of history by learning about what happens on this day, June 15. In 1844, Charles Goodyear received a patent for the process of vulcanizing rubber. His discovery initiated decades of successful rubber manufacturing in Connecticut. The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company is named after him. In 1846, the U.S.-Canadian border was established. The Oregon Treaty established the 49th parallel from the Rocky Mountains to the Strait of Georgia as the boundary between the two countries. And in 1945, Miriam Defensor Santiago was born in the city of Iloilo. Called the Iron Lady of Asia and widely known as an outstanding Philippine senator, she had always wanted to be a writer but ended up a public servant. At the age of 71, she died after battling lung cancer.
We miss her. Now, before we end tonight's broadcast, here's a quote from boxing legend Muhammad Ali. Don't count the days, make the days count.
In fact, make every day count.
Yeah, you have to live with purpose. Every day should bring you closer to your dreams or your goals. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.